What's up, guys? My name's Danny, and this is the first in my series of disc golf form Q&A. I was watching the Golf Channel at a bar with my brother, and I saw a guy who was doing a show where you could email him or tweet him different questions, and he had his golf clubs and a screen and everything, and he would tell you how to fix your slice or what you're doing wrong, and I figured I could do that for disc golf. I'm certainly not a professional, but I'm a decently good advanced player. I can throw usually around 400, 430 feet, so I kind of think I know mostly what to do. I'd certainly think I'm not an expert, so if you have anything to elaborate on or anything to correct me on, feel free to do so in the comments. And let's get started. My first question is, what is the one thing that made disc golf form click? I thought this was an excellent first question, and I'm going to say it's the mantra, slow is smooth, smooth is far. One thing I see a lot of people doing is what I like to call Happy Gilmore, and that's where they come running through their shot and they just run as fast as they can and throw the disc, and they have to throw something like a Boss or a Firebird, and they start it out way on an Anheuser, and it flexes out to a whopping 250 feet, and they think that's disc golf. When in reality, the disc golf form is much more sophisticated than that. Disc golf form is slow and it's controlled, but it's powerful without needing muscles. Simon Lizotte is one of the farthest throwers in our game, and he's actually a pretty scrawny guy if you look at him. It's his long arms and his leverage and his timing. That's how he gets his distance. So, number one trick to throwing far is slow is smooth, smooth is far. All right, my next question was, I'm having trouble pushing off my left heel when I'm driving. I'm told to fix this before I destroy my knee. Now, while I've never actually heard about people having knee problems from pushing off their heel on a disc golf drive, I can tell you you will get lots more power and more control from staying on your toes throughout the drive. A common theme that I see is number one starts when people try and throw destroyers and bosses for their first discs, is when they're throwing, they sit way back here and they come through on an Anheuser like that, which is okay for some throws, but in general that's very inaccurate, and it doesn't get you a whole lot of power, because if you're trying to, imagine you're trying to start a lawnmower and you get your weight way back here, you have no sort of torque on it. Whereas if you move your weight to your toes, you're in an athletic position like a runner in baseball about to steal a base. You've got a lot more power on it. You can really come through and use all of your muscles to throw the disc. Another thing that weight on the heels tends to cause is rounding. Because if my weight's back here, I can move the disc all over here, all around, and my reach back is going to be really inconsistent. Whereas if I have my weight on my toes, I can reach back here. I can get a little bit of up and down, but if I go over or forward, I'm off balance. So keeping your weight on your toes will keep your reach back in check. The only time you want your weight on your heels is right as you're throwing the disc and you transfer your weight into the disc. You want to pop up on your heel right here and then stand up straight. My next question is, what tips would you give to keep your plant foot from bending while you're pulling through? I don't really think feet bend that much, but if you're talking about your plant legs, I can definitely see a problem there. A common problem I see with people, mainly who are going too fast through their shot, is when they throw, their hit, which is where you apply most of the torque and the power to your disc, is over their front foot. They're coming through and they're running as fast as they can, and they just throw it like that, which feels really powerful. It feels like you're really running into your shot, but when you're up here and you're trying to throw, you've taken your lower body out of the equation. So to properly brace against your front foot during a throw, you want to start your reach back as you're coming out of your X step, time your hit so your weight is in between your feet. You don't want to start throwing back here and throw onto your front foot, because that'll mess up your left leg and might damage your knee. You want to time your hit when your weight is in between your feet. That way you'll transfer your weight into your momentum into the disc, rather than having energy left over to take a couple steps. So if you're having problems with your front leg bending on your pull through, chances are you have too much momentum going into your throw and you're over top of your front leg and throwing like that. And I can see that causing a lot of torque on your knee that would not be conducive to playing disc golf for many years. All right, my next question is, how do you work on reach back, and how do you learn to really brace against your front foot when you're throwing? Now, I covered bracing in the last one. You want to make sure and time your shot to where your weight's in between your legs rather than over your front legs, and then you should just naturally brace against your front leg. But as far as working on reach back, one thing I commonly see is I see people who don't reach back far enough, Either that or they reach back too far. The best way to practice a reach back is with a wall. This is gonna sound kind of weird, but if you find a wall in your house that's flat and doesn't have any pictures on it, or otherwise they'd break, then line up against the wall and turn your shoulders to where they're 90 degrees to the wall. Because you don't wanna go past, or you don't wanna go not quite that far. You wanna have your shoulders be 90 degrees to the wall, and then you reach your hand back along the wall. Now you wanna make sure you don't reach away from the wall, or you don't wanna punch the wall in your reach back. You wanna reach your hand along the wall and then bring your hand through. This should get you feeling what a proper reach back should feel like. I'm trying to line up at the camera a little bit better. Your wall's right here. You turn your shoulders 90 degrees and reach back along the wall. This should just get a good feel of what a nice straight shot should feel like. Another thing on a reach back is I see a lot of people reach back way too early. Sometimes I see people, if they're gonna throw that way, they start on the tee like this and they reach the disc back then. And while that works for some people, it really is hard to get correct timing if you do that. Your reach back should be timed, I talked about this earlier, right as you're coming out of your X step. So you start out your shot with your hips and your shoulders lined up at your target. You take your first step and then you do your X step, and you don't want to start your reach back coming into your X step. I see that a lot too. I see people go reach back here, but then you have to hold it back there the whole time you're coming through, and it throws off all your other timing. You know, weight on your toes, shoulders and hips lined up. Take your first step and you keep your feet perpendicular to your line through your X step. And then as you're coming out, you turn your shoulders. The peak of your reach back should be timed with planting this foot right here. And then as soon as you hit the peak of your reach back, you explode through, and you should be able to hit with your weight in between your feet and then transfer all your energy into the disc, and you'll get a lot more distance that way. My next question is, at what point should I be triggering my hips in my throw? I always feel like it's too early or too late or something to that effect. And the answer to engaging your hips in your throw is really kind of a general idea question rather than a specific answer. Because most of the people think of a disc golf throw as a series of triggering your different body parts. They think if you do your feet and then your hips and then your shoulders and then your arm and all that stuff, and that ends up with a really choppy throw. And it's really hard to get that right every time. It's like the people who double pump on the tee box when they're doing their reach back. They reach back 3 or 4 times and then do it for real. And that's another piece of timing that you have to get right. So basically, the way I think about my hips in my throw is what I was talking about earlier. You keep your hips and your shoulders lined up. You don't want to turn them away too early. You keep your feet perpendicular to your shot, and as you're coming out of your X step, when you plant your front foot, plant it on the toe. Now, I turn it a lot, but I see people who just do it like this. And basically, this will turn your hips away from the target. You don't want to consciously turn them like 90 degrees away, or that's another whole nother can of worms. Basically, you want to make sure your toe is planted first, because you can't have your hips straight forward with your toe planted first. If you have your toe planted first, your hips will cock, and then just as you naturally transfer your weight through your foot and through your entire shot, your hips are going to engage. And as long as you time your hit correctly, so where it's in between your feet, you'll transfer your energy into the disc, instead of turning your hips too early and hurting your back, or turning them too late and having an inaccurate throw. So basically, the way I learned how to engage my hips is to make sure, coming out of my X step here, I plant my toe first. Let me know if you have any questions about my answers to your questions, or if I answered it wrong, you can tell me about it. I've done my research, but I'm completely not a professional. So if you have anything to add to the conversation, I would really appreciate it. And look for these threads next time. I usually post it on the Disc Golf Answer Man Facebook page and on the Disc Golf subreddit. So you can ask me your questions there. And thanks for watching.